Hello, friends. My name is Steve, and we're here today to talk about Clash of Kings. We're here with Susanna and Layla. Susanna, will you give us a quick introduction, please?
Hello, my name is Suzana Imaginário, and I write weird fantasy mostly.
And Layla?
I'm Layla Goshi. I'm an English professor and writer, and currently the editor of Ballady Magazine, which I'm uh, building slowly.
It's a slow process for but it's worth it. Yeah, it just takes some time, but you'll get there. So this is a first time read for me. This is a reread for both of you. What did you both notice this time on your rereads, other than the food?
The intricate foreshadowing, um, so much there that at the time, you know, I couldn't see where it was going, and just the amount of groundwork. And I noticed that in the first book, um, this one was. I think I've had even more because it was foreshadowing and at the same time building the characters. The first book was just an introduction, an overview of things, and this one really deep into their psychology and motives and their relationships. So, yeah, the amount of detail and how well so the dialogue is so good. Um, so yeah, they when they adapted the show, they got it easy. I think they had plenty to work with because it was all there. Yeah.
I'd say the foreshadowing too, and also in particular, I paid more attention to Tyrion this time. I think in the past, I'd always been very interested, of course, what's going to happen with Rob and so on. But I got some new insights about Tyrion um, that just were interesting to me. Doesn't change anything in terms of my overall understanding of the book. But
Mhm. It does have a lot of page time in this one.
yeah, yeah. Uh-oh.
Oh, we can't hear you.
I'm sorry, I forgot I muted myself. Hearing Tyrion's voice, because I listened to this on audio for the most part, and hearing his
Mhm.
voice on audio, and then remembering Dinklage's voice is totally because
Yeah,
Dinklage is very. He seems very like smooth and very charismatic, and he has like this really calming voice. And in the audiobook, he's really sounds just doesn't sound anything like that. So it's a little bit of a change.
yeah,
I
yeah.
couldn't get into the audio. That's why I'm reading again because it was just the voices. Pretty much none of them would fit the inner voice that I had from before, and then seeing the character, the actors. No, so that's why I'm reading.
Yeah.
Uh,
For
yeah.
oh, go ahead.
No, no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, the thing about Tyrion this time, I see more. I think more depth and one the instances that attracted my attention this time, especially, were how he handles Cersei, how he interacts with Cersei, and he knows the slap is coming. Like he'll say something, he knows she's going to slap. And there's
Yeah.
like one scene this time that I really overlooked several times, but just where he'll keep making comments and she'll keep slapping him, and he says something else anyway, and I kind of see that as him even growing a bit in how much he's willing to push people. Like he knows just like in the first book, he says, wear your identity like an armor and no one can hurt you,
Mm-hmm.
something like that. And we still see him doing that, but we see him pushing her more and trying to take on more of a sense of power for himself in how he's building his sellswords and his mountain folk, and that kind of thing, and the city watch as well. And I think he's so in some ways he's growing in power.
There was a couple of things because I've seen the series, the adaptation, a couple of times, and I'm surprised how close they are to it. Um, but like you mentioned, they have it easy because it's so well written, and the characters are it's almost like it was begging to be adapted. But one thing
Yeah.
that kind of stuck out to me that I don't think they really emphasized in the show was how significant the comet was in the beginning of the book, because it seems like it was a major event that um, everyone had a different interpretation for. They felt like it was for them.
Yeah, I I was having a blast with that, with everyone's perspective and what it meant, just according to their um, to what they wanted to mean. Yeah, but I guess it wasn't that important in the show. The show started focusing on other things, and I don't think we, unless we had access again to everyone saying what they thought the cam the comet meant, it would just be 30 seconds or a minute of very boring television, just exposition after exposition. It only works in the books because you're inside the character's mind, so it's one of the advantages
Yeah.
of
I've always felt that that is a profound aspect of Martin's book, because no matter whether you're an individual or, whether it's a society, the interpretation you take to an event, is going to play out in terms of just so many other thought processes and decisions. It's like symbolic of a society. And so I really love how he did that.
Mhm.
And I like how everyone declares themselves king. Like
Yes.
everyone's
Yeah,
like, no, I'm the king. No, I'm the king, and
yeah,
it's
and
just such a mess.
it's like at least two of them are teenagers. Yeah, no, that no.
Yeah.
what what could go wrong?
But Rob is a man grown, right? So
No, it's not.
no, I know I'm being sarcastic because
Yeah. I understand, but even in that world is very sheltered.
Mm.
Yeah, and he has his dire wolf, and he thinks he's on top of the world. Um, no, it's still better than Joffrey. Oh man, I know he's supposed to be, one of the most unlikable characters ever, but and he really annoys me all the way through. Um, I had a few thoughts about him, and I toned down since then because I finished the book before on time this time, and so, and then you postponed the discussion. So in the meantime, I calmed down. I had a full rant prepared. It's not relevant. I just reduced it to no, should not be allowed on the throne anywhere anywhere near the throne.
And he is worse to Sansa in the book than he is in the show. I felt like
Yeah.
he's a little bit more. And I understand why they toned it down, but they they tone it back up later in this. But I don't want to get too far into that. But yeah, they seemed like they toned it down and then they cranked it up later for Sansa. But that's another discussion. Parmita had a comment. Did you all like the development of the different factions vying for the Iron Throne? I was very much intrigued and also kept wondering how will Danny fit into all of this.
I see that as Danny's challenge would be the same as Aegon the Conqueror, which is to again unite the different um, keeps or kings or whatever they are, again to bring them together. Um, if we are to believe, legend, to bring them together to make the kingdom stronger as a whole. So I would see that at this point in the book as that would be Danny's challenge, because what obviously now what was holding them all together was the tradition of Targaryen strength with their dragons, but then the dragons died. So, things did start going off the rails. But that would be her challenge is um, she would need to find a way to bring them all back together if she is to restore the throne as a traditional Targaryen seat of power.
I thought almost the opposite. The first time I read the book, I was thinking, well, this is great. They're just gonna kill each other. And meantime, she's gathering an army and resources and growing, and then she's just, by the time she's ready, she's just arrive and everything's destroyed, and she just takes over as a savior of sorts. That's what I thought at the time when I read the book the first. That's where it was going. It's not, but that's what I thought. Yeah, I am glad that I was wrong, because this is much better.
And I think it follows like a political, real life politics wherein you do need a strong central government to keep things, stable. And so whoever it is, whether it's the Targaryens or whether it's whoever, if you don't have that, then you're going to see the breakdown of different interests coming forward, and everyone saying, "Yes, I'm the king now." So
are the Starks the only ones? Well, I guess they're, but yeah, I guess they are vying for the throne too in a way. But yeah, they a little late to the party, and the other ones are a little bit more a little quicker to declare themselves. And it seems like the Starks are more about, vengeance and justice for Ned than the throne. Is that unfair?
Yeah, I think the throne is secondary. If they're, I think if they want the throne, would be the throne of the North. They want to be reinstated as the kings of the North. The rest would be just revenge against the Lannisters.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's their primary motivator at this point. So.
And Joffrey is the worst. Go ahead, Susanna.
No, I just, okay, I'm going to go into this. So one of the things that struck me differently this time as I read was Cersei. Because the first time I didn't like her that much. The show was fine. Her character I liked more, but I thought it was the actress that was influencing the change. But now reading the book, I find myself sympathizing with her a lot. Because I mean, she was dealt such a horrible hand. I mean, she's stuck in this world of men. She's surrounded by men and torn between them. It's the father, the brother lover, the son, the husband, the cousin. For some reason now, even the Meister Littlefinger varies. She just doesn't get a break, because her power derives from all these men around her. And so I do sympathize. I understand why she drinks. I do understand her much better now. The only thing that annoys me about her, really, is Joffrey. And in a show, her love for her children, especially for him, the way that she almost not overlooks, but she forgives everything he does, because she's a mother and she loves her children, etc. That is supposed to be a redeeming quality. I think in the books are actually her greatest flaw. It's not a quality at all. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a mother. I don't have children. But if I have a Joffrey, actually that wouldn't happen. We would have a conversation long before returning to that creature. But I don't think I could love and defend that person. Especially, being the king, being in that position of power, me feeling responsible for raising, I don't know, and that never gets discussed. Then again, we don't have a point of view. We only have Tyrion's point of view, and he's is a bit biased when it comes to her, so we don't know. But it was the thing that kept looking at me. It's like, oh, Cersei, just do something about it, please. I know he's the king, but he's also your son. You have to do something about it. But yeah, that was one of my rants.
I see it the same way in terms of Cersei should have done more. I think the reason she doesn't is that she sees all of her children as they're also instruments of power for her, because first of all, their designation as heirs to Robert, even though they're not really Roberts, and so I think she does see Joffrey as a way of maintaining power, and so maybe she does give in to him, and maybe also that's her concept of just her concept of how men should be. I mean, Robert was no angel. Her father is no angel. Her brothers. I have some sympathy for Tyrion, and I like Jaime as a character, but I mean, all of them are different representations, except maybe Tyrion, of how she has to cater to those men's needs or desires. So it's like she's brought that along with Joffrey as well, doing the same thing. And something that strikes me too is Joffrey has two fathers, essentially. Neither one that obviously has stepped in
Exactly.
any kind of emotional relationship with him at all, because he doesn't seem to he doesn't even barely even notices that Robert has died, other than now he's going to be king. I mean, we don't see Joffrey sad about it or upset about it. And I think in this point of the book, there's not really any, I can't remember if there's any comment about Joffrey having any perspective on Jaime at all. So there I may remember. I'll try to think of it, but yeah. So I think the fathers have failed him as well, but it's when we see Cersei, we don't see her taking a moral or ethical stand with Joffrey at all.
No.
Parmita had a comment. Suzanne, I completely agree, but I also have seen parents in real life turn a complete blind eye to their children's faults and do everything to cover up for them. So maybe there's a grain of truth there.
Yeah, I suppose. It's just, yeah. I don't think it's a redeeming quality at all. I think it's a flaw. I think, yeah.
Just in terms of fantasy in general, there's other books I've read where, in terms of the female role in the story, it's like an honor for the woman to, marry the king and bear his sons and the heirs and so on. And so I think Martin's playing with that trope a bit as well, or letting it see a deeper insight into that.
So, but that would be fine for a character like Caitlyn. She fits the role very well. But the thing about Cersei is that she doesn't. She wasn't cut out to be a wife or a mother. She wanted to go and fight with her brother. She wanted to explore. I think it's in the book that it's mentioned that something that she didn't understand, why them being so so alike and then treated so differently, because she doesn't fit into that role. So maybe she's overcompensating because being a mother is the only thing that she's allowed that she's and that she's allowed to be. But still, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know what I would do in her position. That's what when I started the conversation. She's really in a bad position, especially having that sort of personality. Yeah, I would go insane in that position.
Yeah. And it even plays on our expectations there, because our expectation in regard to, the story is that the woman will take the more angelic road and, just bear it patiently and sweetly. And Cersei is the complete opposite of that.
No.
So, and that makes it so fun to read, really, too.
Yeah, definitely. Permit had a question. What did people think of Melisandre? I know Cersei is difficult, but Melisandre legitimately creeps me out.
Oh, I think she's great.
I
It's
love her
one of
too.
my favorite characters. I even dressed up as her for Halloween many, many years ago. I really like her, and the books, yeah, she's great. I don't want to give any spoilers because the series kind of changed her a lot and her path through the story. But she's one of the characters that I'm very, very curious to see what's going to happen to in the books.
Yeah, there is something in this book that made me, sit back and think, is when Stannis admits the sword is not the sword, essentially. That it was a flaming sword, but the flaming sword. And so that was just enough to give me a sense that, okay, something else must be going on with Melisandre. I do love the idea of her being, this sort of magical person, but there's something there between her and Stannis that maybe isn't pure, or maybe her motives aren't pure. Just from that first conversation. I mean, that not the conversation about the sword, if I'm remembering this right, that Stannis and Davos have, where Davos is saying that's not the sword.
Oh, it's Davos, but not with Stannis. With some other character that I forgot the name. They meet at the tavern for some reason. This pirate character, maybe I'm wrong. And
Okay.
the pirates kind of hints that it's not the sword. And then he mentioned it to Stannis. I think that's it. Please, someone correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I think you're right. Yeah. So that's a hint about her.
Yeah, it was all for show. They are using each other. They're not a romantic couple at all. They are using each other. She has her agenda. He has his agenda, and they are making it work somehow. But why didn't she? Since she's so powerful, why was not the real sword? If she's so powerful and so convinced that he is, the rightful heir or the champion from God or whatever it is that she believes. Yeah, I still don't get that. I'm still not sure what's going on there. Are the gods deceiving her, or I don't know what's going on.
There was one thing in the series that I think happens in reverse, because in the book, Renly is killed, and we don't know. We would just know he's killed by a shadow, and then we found out later that it was Melisandre who spawned. It was her spawn. But in the TV series, I think we see the shadow creature be, given birth, and that runs out, and then we see it later. I think in an episode or two later. I liked it in the books better because you don't know what it is, and then you find out later where it came from. I thought that was more effective.
It worked very well.
Yeah, I think so too. And that also helps us think about Catelyn and wonder if, is Catelyn finally losing it, or she's you know, that's not the only thing that that has made me wonder if Caitlyn's losing it, but or Catelyn, yeah. So interesting.
Well,
Yeah.
she has reason to, especially towards the end when she thinks that her sons are dead. It is the well, I think Ned's death was the beginning of her mind starting to unravel. But again, she has a lot on her plate with the father and the son, seriously, and the brother, and yeah. Um, I was going to say something about it, and now I completely forgot. So someone says something
I wonder,
until I get my thoughts together.
I wonder what you think. Is there a parallel there between Catelyn and Cersei? Because Catelyn's saying, "Oh, there's my son, almost a man grown and a king," and then
Mm,
Cersei has her son as the king, and they are playing that background role of trying to influence their sons
mhm,
instead of being the leader that maybe they could be.
mhm.
Our friend Daniel had a comment. I think he's referring to the Starks. They just don't want to have to bend the knee to the rest of the Empire. The reinstatement of the King of the North was their goal.
Yeah.
Another change that was in the books is that when Jaime's released, that whole thing was a lot different in the show, and
Mhm.
that in the series it made Caitlyn look less thoughtful, like more of like an emotional reaction than it was
Mhm.
a deliberate choice to.
Mhm.
I like that. I thought it represented her character better in the book than it did in the show.
Yeah, less calculate.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was an act of almost despair than calculation. Yeah, agree. One thing that was in the show and was good, and I really enjoyed in the show was Arya and Tyrion. In the books, I think she's with Bolton. What is his name? So I'm terrible with characters' names.
Bruce
Oh,
Bolton.
Rose Bolton. Yes,
Yeah.
it doesn't work so well. I think the show getting Arya and Tyrion together, those scenes at the table, they were perfect. Um, so there's that in my mind, still playing that. I didn't enjoy the Arya bits in the book at all, apart from um, the the faceless. Um, e- Everything surrounding Arya, yeah, but I didn't. I enjoy it more in the show. Let's put it this way. I wasn't invested in the troubles in the book that much, even though everything was horrible. I just wasn't invested in everything else going on.
You know, that is one. That's one thing that I have always had kind of a quibble about in the book is that the Starks apparently have a very distinctive look, and with Ruth Bolton having, you know, known
Mm,
Starks for years, I always felt like that was just a shade too unreal for me. And you could say it's because Arya had cut her hair. But if also she's supposed to have the look of Lyanna, which is a stark look and that kind of thing, I just, you know, I had to suspend my belief a bit there.
mm,
But I think as a bit of humor, I think the idea of Tyrion and Arya, you know, being there in Roos's presence and, you know, just that
mhm,
kind of comedy of errors type of setup.
mhm,
Yeah, that was good.
mm.
Permeate mentions in this book, my heart really went out to Arya. Her travel wasn't that whole thing. I don't know if it was. It seems a little weird that she cuts her hair and then no one recognizes her at all, I don't know. But
Maybe you have to look at it from the perspective of the time. gender roles are so defined that you see a young girl, especially, she hasn't hit puberty yet, so I guess she could pass for a boy quite easily. And they would never expect that, a lady, you know, uh, would be, working as a servant, or I mean, it wouldn't even cross their mind to look for her in that environment, or they would be looking for something completely different. So that's how she, she managed to go invisible, pretty much.
And that's what I thought when she's with the other folks on the way to the Night's Watch, or phone them. I could accept that because it's a whole bunch of other regular folks, and she's cut her hair and still young. So yeah, maybe she could be a boy, and they've got their own problems to deal with. Um, but yeah, someone who's usually as astute as Bruce Bolton, I did have a little trouble with that. But I did want to, well, my heart went out to Arya when Ned died,
Mhm.
and she realized she was alone. But at the same time, I think that the life she's living, while hard, is getting more toward her essential self and who she really is. She is a wolf. She still has a link with Nymeria. She's using everything she learned from her sword fighting lessons. So I think in a way she's, I don't know, I'm thinking she's living her best life. I know that's not totally, because she's having some hardship too, but she's becoming more of the Arya that I think she was meant to be.
Mm.
She's one of the more capable characters in the. I thought she's one of the more capable characters in the book. Very. She's a survivor.
Mhm.
Yes, definitely.
Paramita asked a question. Just wondering, did anyone feel the pacing in this book was slow compared to A Game of Thrones? I read the first 5 books back to back, and Clash felt very much like a setup book for Storm.
No, but then again, I was enjoying the book so much, so the pacing was fine. Apart from food descriptions, where the pacing just went very, very slow. Everything else is fine.
What about you, Layla?
In the previous times I read it, I was not as engaged with Tyrion's journey, and that made me think of this book as one I was less interested in rereading, just in general. But I was saying before we came on the air, I started really appreciating that Tyrion is growing in this book, growing in power, and so I would say once I understood that, it became less slow, and I was more engaged. And I think the first time, I wanted to know what was going on with Sansa, because I'm so sympathetic with, the women of the book. I mean, Sansa and Arya and Daenerys, and so to me, that's what made it slow before.
Hmm.
Yeah, there were some the Arya stuff. I thought was a little slow, but the rest of it I thought was okay. Yeah, it was a little weird because there was some small differences, but the main twists and turns you kind of know if you've seen the show. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe that played into it too. For me, and Martin likes to describe stuff.
I think when you're interested, I'm sure, Susanna, you're interested in world building too. And so I love to read, about the world that Martin's creating.
Mhm.
But
So,
that too can slow things down.
yeah, but for me, it doesn't. It's not the descriptions themselves that slows down. If it's a good description, if it's just information, yeah, it's the same with pacing. If you are reading something that even if it's an info dump, but if it's about something you want to know, so you won't be bored, you won't notice. It's only when you're trying to get to to find out a certain thing, or you're not invested in this character or in that scene, then it's how it feels like the book is dragging. It's not the book itself, it's just you are not in it because you are waiting or wanted to read something else to get to a different stage, to a different character.
Yeah.
So I am fine with the world building. I don't mind. It's just the number of names, naming characters. Wow. Just took me 6 months just to come up with the names. Maybe that's why it's taking him so long to finish. He's still picking names. Oh dear.
Another thing that surprised me that I felt the show touched on it, but it didn't put as much emphasis as the books is Bran and his visions and dreams. I thought it's a really important part for him, and I don't remember it being that that much of a focal point in the show, but I am enjoying that part of it in the book too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's, for now, I'll just say I think that helps us understand Bran a lot better, as he grows through the books too.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to not spoil stuff.
I know. And the Starks, not just Bran, but the Starks' connection to the trees and the old gods, and I think Martin's laying the groundwork for that with Bran, and it's always neat to see Bran does meet the Crannog folk, Jojen and Mira.
Mm-hmm.
So that was cool to see in this book.
Mm-hmm.
See where that goes.
Pardon me, I had a tough question, but assume the show didn't exist. Based on these two books only, could you predict what Martin was going for thematically with the series? Did it change on your reread? That's a good question.
I think. Yeah, go ahead.
Look, no, I could not predict. If you had asked me at the beginning of the first book, after reading the prologue, I had this idea, which was probably closer than what the idea was at this point. Because at this point it was like, okay, I thought the important thing is what zombies or the undead coming in the north and the dragons on the other side. So this is the important thing. Why are you feeding me all this information in the middle? It's all very entertaining, but why are you doing this? So I guess at this point, I wouldn't know. And to go back to what we talked before, if I had to guess the end, it would be everyone kills each other, then he comes over with the dragons, takes over. So it's kind of where I was at this point, but it just kept adding more and more. The drowned gods, the faceless man, just everything adding up. And just a little aside, in the show, the gods are mentioned. I love gods, but in the books they feature a lot more. All these little asides, religions going on. You really have a sense that there is magic in this world, that there is something, some higher force kind of moving strings. That's the sort of thing that I go nuts for. So and the show didn't quite feature. It was just mentioned just as any other religion. And yes, there's magic and dragons, well, of course. But they didn't quite delve into the reasons behind and who these forces or entities were. So.
Well, on my first read ever of Game of Thrones, I just thought it's a good story and put it down because waiting, for the next book and that kind of thing, and didn't think about it. But based on what Martin has said, he has said that the seeds of his, conclusion is in the first book. So he, did plant seeds, and so there's so much discourse about what that is. But I think you can see it in general that, and this has nothing to do with the show ending at all, but from the first book, we know the Starks are important. Who do we meet? First few chapters, we meet the Starks, we meet the Lannisters, and we meet the last of the Targaryens. So that's going to play through somehow through the rest of the series. So that would be my expectation at this part in the series, that, okay, we started with them, somehow it's got to end with them because they're still all in the game.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, really interested to see what he does with the books after the end of the show.
Right.
Another thing that stuck out to me was the wildlings, and that they seem to have bigger aspirations in the book than they did in the show. They seemed like kind of like
Mhm.
like savages, or just wanting to cause chaos. So they wanted a life, but they weren't thinking on a bigger scale. But it seems like they have bigger aspirations in the book. They have plans.
Much bigger. And well, I'm not going to spoil because you haven't read the books yet. Their storyline, or what will happen in the North in the books, is quite different. And I think we will be introduced to Mance Rayden in the next book, and all that storyline that completely. I was very surprised watching the show. Why did you do that? The actor didn't want to continue? I don't know. They could still have fixed it if that was the issue, and that ties in with Melisandre and all that stuff. So yes, you're right. They are very different, and they do have an agenda, and they are a much worthy faction within the Game of Thrones, so to speak.
They're gonna have to shed some layers of clothing once they, if they do get farther down down south.
What a horrible environment. Yeah.
So I want to ask about Theon's journey in this book. What are your all? Do you sympathize with Theon, or
No, not at all. He's such a prick. Seriously, no sympathy, especially knowing what's coming. No sympathy, because the way that he treats women, my God, he's such a jerk. But there was one thing that I much prefer in the books: his relationship with his sister, especially when they met, and he doesn't recognize her, and just a whole character. She's brilliant in the books, and they changed for the series. They even changed their name. Why? Because so it wouldn't be, because it was too similar, Asha to Washa. No, it's not that similar at all. And they changed her personality, and I thought that was a shame to ruin that dynamic. But anyway, back to Tim. Yeah, is there's a little bit of sympathy there. There's one bit when he admits how much, having been, a hostage, because that is what it was to the Starks, even though he was well treated, etc. But how much that weighs on him, the isolation, there was a little bit of sympathy, but it still doesn't justify just how arrogant and conceited he is. So yeah, just no. Jerk, no. He has a lot to redeem himself. Yeah.
I agree about the women. What do you think, Steve?
I do not like him. And Heather agrees. Theon is the worst. I agree, Susanna. The way he treats women is horrendous. I started out feeling a little. Well, I try to forget about the TV series and just think about. I try to separate the two, but at first I was a little bit sympathetic because he was like a prisoner, but as the books go on and the way he treats people, and he switches very quickly to let's take Winterfell. It doesn't take him very long to just like flip, and I guess that part I guess it makes sense. But he was treated really good, and he was almost treated like I mean, from what I can tell, almost like a part of the family. He was involved in a lot of things, and so yeah, he's one of those that you just root against no matter what. He's but that's one thing Martin does great, and Susan, he had mentioned about Joffrey and getting upset over these characters, and it's to be able to create so many characters that we hate so much. That's it must be really tough to do, to have so many of them and so many that we root for. Is a tough thing to do.
True.
What about Catelyn? That was one good piece of advice she gave Robb, to not let Theon be his emissary back to, his father. And but if she had her suspicions, she might have been more specific about them. But I don't know if Robb would have listened to her.
No, likely not.
Yeah. So it also, he makes me think, I know it was the tradition of the day, but it's still, I guess Ned did both what he felt he had to do, to take Theon, and he did treat him well, but you get over that he took somebody else's kid, as a hostage too. And so that just shines a little bit of a different light on Ned to me.
On that is not out of character. It's not a reflection on Ned's character. It's a reflection on the society. So this is kind of a tangent, but I recently went visit a castle nearby. Lots of them in Ireland. So I went to this private tour with the owner, and she showed me around. Beautiful place, 800, 900 years old, still very well preserved. And she showed us this hostage room, because it was a custom to kind of keep things peaceful between the different lords, that whenever there was a skirmish, or to avoid the skirmish, you would send one of your children, usually a son, to live with your enemy, to kind of appease. And they had a special room for it. So, the way that windows are in castles, in old castles with the very thick walls, so that the windows are kind of, they have an opening to let in as much light as possible. It's just a slit, but inside you have that opening. The hostage room, fairly decent size, comfortable, close to the main hall, so we would have eating, etc. But the windows were just slits, so it was to make it as gloomy, as dim and depressing as possible. And it was positioned in a way that it could probably hear, if there was a party or something going on in the main hall, and you would be stuck there. So they weren't necessarily treated like family, and it must have been a horrible position to be in. And I thought, since it's related, I thought it would be interesting to mention. So it doesn't reflect on Ned's character. He was doing what he was supposed to be doing, and we see him being well treated, but the stigma would still be there. He would be kind of a bastard, kind of like Jon Snow. He wouldn't be allowed to participate in a lot of family discussions or parties or events. So I guess 10 years of that, he would start eating at you. Yeah.
That makes sense. And I have to say, being able to say this castle nearby would be a wonderful thing
Yeah,
to be able to say that's so cool. I have
that's
to
cool.
get there someday.
Speaking of
Yeah, you should.
castles, yeah, yeah, there's been discussions about a trip over there lately. But
Mm.
um, speaking of castles, Harrenhal is almost like a character in itself because of
Mhm.
all the history and the mystery around it. I think there's more Harrenhal later, but that castle has this aura about it. This like spooky, cursed place.
Mhm. Mhm. Cursed, yes. The brief history of it in the book, I was like, yeah, that's a short story in itself. It's a
Mm.
little horror story.
Yes, I love that they were there, and I love that it was Roose Bolton that was in charge. I you know, I won't say more for now, but I think you're right. I think it is a character in itself. It has such an important place. In this book, though, we did see that Littlefinger is being promised Harrenhal. Am I remembering that right?
Yeah, I
In-
think so.
Mm.
yeah.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
Tyrion is, hinting at that promise to Littlefinger if Littlefinger will do some things for him. So, which Littlefinger is not Roose Bolton, and so it'll just be interesting to compare um, people and how they're involved with Harrenhal. I think that's interesting. And something else that happened at Harrenhal this time in this book is Arya meets the Frey boy, not knowing she was betrothed to him. They didn't know they would have been betrothed to each other. I think that was
Mm.
Elmar Elmar Frey, if I've got that right. And he's crying because he's not going to get to marry his princess, not
Mm.
realizing that's Arya, and neither one know why. I mean, we know that they were betrothed to each other, but we don't know why he's now crying that
Mhm.
he's not going to get to marry her. And Arya is oblivious to the whole thing, and that I like that in terms of Martin's writing and how it's only when you read it a second time or third time do you realize what's really happened there, what's really going on.
Mhm.
So,
Mm. Those little bits, yeah.
little bits, yeah.
And a new place is Quarth that we go to, right? I don't think that was in book one.
No,
No.
Quarth, and again, we don't know much, but essentially they're like a lifeline for Danny and the others who have been, wandering the Red Waste.
Mhm.
And Danny has sent out scouts to look for, a town or somewhere. And then they're there and they're going to have
Mhm.
adventures.
Yeah, then he spends most of the book just wandering and surviving. Um, the whole thing with the warlocks, I, I read it a couple of times just as she goes through the doors, just to see if I could glimpse what does it mean with this scene, this foreshadowing. I I I I didn't get them. No, not all of them. I have it here marked just so I can go back and see if I can figure it out. What he was trying to show us was an interesting thing.
Yeah.
But the rest of her storyline, I found it a bit, yeah, it's still setting up. She had her high moment, and now she's recuperating and gathering herself and coming up with a plan, which is fine. You know, uh, give other characters a chance to evolve.
There is one connection I'm going to make to book one for both Arya and Daenerys, which is, Arya now having been knocked out of her uh, her traditional place is having to learn about herself. And there's a part in book one, right before Daenerys is supposed to marry Khal Drogo, and she's listening to like kids playing outside her balcony, and she says, she thinks, I mean, the kids are out there playing around the fires, they're barefoot, you know, and she wishes she were down there with them and not marrying Khal Drogo. And then she gets knocked out of her path and is now barefoot essentially, as those kids are, and is on her new path. So I feel like there's a connection, some kind of connection there where parallel her and Arya, and how they had to take up certain roles, but then through tragedy were knocked toward going for what they really want. And I think Martin told us in the book what she really wants is to just be normal, just be down there with the others, having fun and doing things, So, but I don't think she's going to get there yet. I think Arya will get to her place quicker. I don't know.
Well, yeah, it's an interesting perspective that in a way, they are getting what they wanted, is just not exactly how they wanted. And so it's careful with what you wish for. Yeah, interesting. I've looked at it that way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And what about the battle? Because even reading the second time, and I am so thankful for the TV show, because even reading the second time, I could not get a sense of what the hell was happening. I mean, I could not visualize. It was just too much, too big, too much fight. Everything's burning, but they're still walking over there. I was like, okay. It was one of the scenes that I was looking forward to seeing the show, just so I could see it, because I could not visualize it. And reading the second time with the image I had from the show, I'm confused. Okay, things burn, people die. Let's go back to Tyrion and what he's doing. I mean, I'm not saying that it's bad written or anything like that. No, that's not the case. The whole thing is epic, but I struggled to just get the whole scope of what the hell was going on, and seeing it was awesome. It's still one of my favorite scenes in the whole series.
That's a great point, and that could be part of the I don't know if pacing is the right word for it, but I think for me it was also who was allied with who. And I don't think that's even the case with just this book. There are times where there are other books I'll read for the first time, and there's a battle or there's something going on, and it's like, oh man, all these new names, and okay, I need a map. Who's allied with who? Who's where? Who's north? Who's south? So I find that now I understand, but on a first reread, or second even, I think it takes a little concentration until you know the characters.
I'm glad you both said that, because I was a little lost there. I thought it was just me, so I'm glad to hear it. I often lose for these big epic battle scenes. There's only a few authors that I can really follow what's going on, but I usually get lost in those. Excuse me, in those scenes.
There was just too much. When I start understanding the plan, but even after it, I could not imagine that fire, and then okay, as everything's burning, how are still people fighting over there? Very tragic. But I was just waiting for the end, and it didn't end. It just kept going and kept going, getting worse and worse. And I was like, okay. I know the story continues. Even the first time I read, I know there's gonna be someone alive to carry on. But wow.
Yeah.
And our friend Rachel is here. Hey, Rachel.
Hello.
Hope you're having a good day too.
Hello.
And Rachel agrees. True, I had a hard time on several occasions remembering who was on whose team. I think it's something the show really helped with.
Mhm. Mhm.
And thank you, Rachel, for the good vibes. My lungs are still upset with me from yesterday.
Oh.
So
Oh,
I went on a two. I probably overdid it yesterday on my ride, so my lungs are upset.
gotcha.
What
Gotcha.
are you doing
Moving
to
on,
me?
yeah.
Yeah. Pardon me. Not a visual reader at all. So I was okay having these. These are the outcomes. Gotcha. Moving on. The scene or the sequence where Theon takes Winterfell and the two Starks, Bran and I forget the other one's name.
Rickon?
Rickon. I'm sorry.
Mhm.
When they escape, it's still as heartbreaking as it is as it was
Mm,
seeing it on the show.
mhm.
I agree.
Mhm. And I kicked myself because that was something I did not realize the first time when I read it. And upon reread, the the vision dream that the boy has, it's yeah, it says it all. Once you know, you understand. But at the time, I didn't. I didn't catch that. And I was like, oh, okay, well done.
There's so many details in this series. So many little things and so many details. It's crazy.
Hmm.
It is stunning. It's like the comet in the sense, you can look at what's going on in so many different ways. And just fun.
And they could all be right. That is the thing. You can relate. You can understand each position. That is really hard to do. So,
Yeah.
and great to read.
I don't know that I'd say I like Stannis. Like I don't root for him, but I like the character. I think he's a good character. I don't root for him, but he's kind of like that rough and gruff uncle you don't really invite over for holidays and stuff. He's I don't know, his character I thought kind of like the other like bad characters we kind of I enjoy reading his character. Put it that way.
Yeah. I feel the same way. And I think that I like him in general. I think we haven't seen enough right now. I think we've seen the more, you know, uh, power power hungry Stannis, I guess. He's trying to establish himself as the true heir and the king. But I think that, and he definitely has problems, but there is something that makes you like him because I think I don't know, the way I'm hesitating because I can't remember what we've been told so far, but I think that he is someone who will go the distance for his beliefs, and there is something admirable about that. It's kind of like um, Ned Stark, but a more extreme version.
But even more stark. The thing, Stan is. I kind of feel bad saying this, but it just speaks just how good a character he is as a character, because he's right to go for the throne. He's the only one that actually has a proper right to the throne. And when we learn about him and how he was treated and left on Dragonstone and everyone's perspective of him, you really understand. Wow, people will mean really shit to you, but he's also the type of person that you can't like. I mean, he is right, and he has all the right moral codes, and he's hardworking, and he's honest to a fault almost. The way that he treated Davos. I mean, you can't find a fault with his decisions, with his actions, but at the same time, he's so unlikable. And I like the quiet, stoic, cold characters. But it just makes me tense. Just reading is a bit, I was getting tense. The tension, because they're always, mentioned several times, and he's always grinding his teeth, and he's always so tense. Yeah, it comes across, and I wanted to root for him, and I can't. I find myself. I think if he did get to be king, to be in power, it would be a disaster. He would probably turn into the most tyrannical or most ruthless of them all, because he's so strict. Everything is really black and white. There's no middle ground for him, and I think needs to give a bit. There's a line in the book that I liked, was from a character, a blacksmith character, and he was comparing the three brothers. That Robert was the true steel, Stannis was iron, he would break, and Renly was bronze, it was just shiny. That's perfect to define the tree. And yeah, he's too hard. He's too hard on himself. He's too hard on others. So yeah, the only result will be to break.
I agree. That's a great point. I think he so believes in whatever cause he has that he's willing to do harm to uphold the cause, still thinking that he's doing the right thing, and it's, yeah, that is dangerous.
Parmitha, the panel members have made so many works of fantasy. What are your thoughts on the depth of Martin's world building?
Outstanding, just amazing. Just one of the best ever.
I completely agree. And I think that I agree. Well, I'll just leave it there. I agree.
It's not about the number of detail or how much detail it has or how many characters, how many generations. It's that it's described in a way that it's believable. It's believable, it's relatable, even though it has gods and dragons and etc. in magic. It's the quality of the detail that it presents, as much as the quantity of characters. Because of course, if they tell you this generation upon generation, you buy into it a little easier, I guess. I digress. It's the quality. He knows exactly what to show us, what to tell. It's just not the history of the houses. Is the climate, is the magic, the factions, and even what's going around Westeros. Everything is. You read and you're like, yeah, this is a real place. As everything, it works.
I think what I was trying to think, the words I was trying to think of is, it's psychologically deep to me.
Yes.
Yes. There are wheels within wheels and themes within themes that make you think about not only the characters, but make you think about your own experience with life, and
you can relate.
It's got all the essential themes. I mean, power and love and danger and transformation and all of that. And I think that's what makes it great literature,
Totally agree. Parmitha, Stannis is scary. Stannis and Melisandre, Mayday. And Chadia, hey Chadia, good to see you. Thanks for coming by. Anything else you guys can think of before we sign off? There's so much. I mean, there's a ton, but
just mention Sansa and the Hound, and just Sansa. She really. It's like Chris said. Her name should be Sansa. The whole thing with her knight And I know she's young, but why do you have to be so stupid? On one hand, she's learning, she's learning how to deal with Jeffrey and the situation, but on the other, she's so naive, so distracted by the wrong things still. So yeah, but there were good moments. I liked especially the scenes between her and Cersei. I think Cersei, in her own way, she's trying. She sees something in her, and she's trying to help her. Um, in the whole way that she can or she knows how. But I like that she seems to have a better relationship with Sansa than, at least we don't see a relationship with what's the name of the daughter? I'm terrible. Cersei's daughter.
Oh,
What's her name?
I know it. I know. I'm
there's so many characters.
We all know it. We all know
Yeah.
it. It's fine.
There's Joffrey Common, and maybe someone in the chat will remind us.
It's contagious.
Yeah. Marcella.
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 Yeah, Marcella.
Yes, thank
Marcella.
you. So yeah. Mm-hmm.
Jeez, thank you.
The thing about Sansa, she kind of grew up on the equivalent of like Disney movies, the princess stuff, and again, she was raised to, and she's perfect at what she was raised to be. She was raised to be a young lady who, will have options in life. And Martin does the same thing to her that he's done to Arya and Daenerys, because she wants Jonquil. She wants the night, and she gets her Jonquil, who is the fool in the Godswood,
Mm-hmm.
But it's not in exactly the situation that she had always dreamed of.
No.
But
yeah, Rachel is right. She's just she's what she was brought up to be, and until she grows from there, it's going to take a while. And but still, it's the I'm reading and I find myself shaking my head. I'm reading the chapters. Just no.
Ned actually, Ned and Captain both undermine themselves by raising Sansa that way, and then essentially turning her loose in the castle to be Joffrey's betrothed. And of course they didn't realize they were doing that, but they contributed to that, and that was partly their downfall too. But at the same time, Ned harmed Sansa when he killed Lady, so there's kind of a circle thing going on there.
Rachel makes an interesting point. Sansa actually makes good foil for other female characters because there's the base comparison and makes everyone else stand out.
That's a great point.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That too.
Yeah.
Oh, and Patchface.
Oh, yeah.
I had forgotten about him, and it was good to, because it's right at the beginning of the book, and I was like, oh yeah, I remember you, and lost, but it wouldn't have worked in the show, I don't think. But now I want to know more about the drowned god or whatever god is in the ocean. What is going on there?
Yeah, because he's kind of equivalent. He's kind of the equivalent of a White now, but instead of
kind of
dying in the cold and coming back to life, he's died in the water and he's come back, and now he's kind of like a conduit between whatever got a hold of him and I guess the drowned god.
Yeah, there was this line that then stick to me, that when I think is the Meister was describing, is saying that it felt clammy since then. Since then, he always felt clammy. It's like, oh, you kind of feel that kind of shiver. You just know what's going on here. Um, so well written. So just go. We should do a discussion. We're just gushing about George R. R. Martin writing and word choice. Just yeah, very very.
Mm.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
Cool. Anything else you either of you can think of?
Well,
I'm sure we could go on for hours and hours. But
yeah, but I think the main points were discussed. I really enjoyed this read. I think even more than the first book, and I'm looking forward to the next one and the next discussion.
Yeah. Me too.
Can be good stuff. So before we sign off, Susanna, if someone wants to find you and your work, where can they find you?
My work is available everywhere. Timelessness is the name of the series. First book is Weird Gods, and you can contact me. Email. We can find me on Twitter, Vero, Facebook, not Instagram. I don't pay attention to Instagram anymore. But you'll find me if you look for me. If you just Google me, you'll find me. There's no missing.
And speaking of Vero, Susanna and I are both doing the 365-day challenge. I think Susanna's on day 105, 104.
6,
Okay.
yeah, something like that.
Yeah. So we're both in the middle of that right now too. So over on Vero.
I'll follow you. I've been. I think I set up my my account and I followed Steve, but I'll look for you, Susanna. Excuse me.
Okay. I really like Vero. It's my break from social media. But funny enough, I don't post a lot about my work there. It's kind of more my private, my more private stuff, and away from all the writing community madness. So yeah,
It does feel like a way. It feels like an escape. Yeah. I'm sorry, Layla. Go ahead. Where can people find you and what you have going on?
Fine. I'm mostly on Twitter or Instagram right now, and working to build my magazine site, Validity Magazine, and otherwise just doing all the other work I have to do in real life. Yeah.
Keep him busy.
Yeah.
But thank you both for joining. I'm sorry we had to postpone. There was no. I would have to just like there's no way I was going to finish in time. So sorry, apologies, but thank you for both. Thank you both for coming by.
No, thank you for having us.
Of course, and we'll set a date for the third book, but we'll let everyone know. But thanks again, everyone in the chat, for coming by and some good conversation about Sansa and her role, and I think it's really interesting. But thanks for the great questions, and we'll see everyone next time.
Okay, till next time. Bye.